ESPN hyped up a pair of Miami Dolphins draft picks from the 2025 NFL Draft, that being Jonah Savaiinaea, the offensive lineman from Arizona that Miami took with the 37th overall pick, second-round selection. But they also hyped up Jordan Phillips, the defensive lineman from Maryland, who was ultimately selected in the 5th round, 143rd overall. I'm Nic Rohloff. This is Dolphins Today by Chat Sports, and we're going to talk first about what was said about Jonah Savaiinaea, because ESPN Field Yates ranked him as the third best impact player, or in terms of their projection, not selected in the first round. So they went 10 players on offense, 10 players on defense, who can have the largest impact on their teams that weren't first rounders, and Savaiinaea was the third on the offensive end. And before we talk about what Yates had to say and Savaiinaea as a prospect, I want to grow Dolphins Today and get more people in our family. And the best way to do that is by sharing today's video, because some people might not see our content, but if you share it on social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and more people see our content and join us and subscribe, it's just going to create a bigger and larger and more fun family. So help us out and share today's video. All right, let's see what Field Yates had to say about Savaiinaea. He said it was clear that Miami valued Savaiinaea during the draft, making an aggressive push up the board to get him. He gives the Dolphins a legitimate starting guard candidate right out of the gate. They had a desperate need to upgrade the position. Savaiinaea showed excellent positional versatility in college, but he should slide inside as a starting guard in Miami's zone-heavy scheme. He allowed only 2 sacks over 3 seasons at Arizona. And Jonah from Zona did play offensive tackle for the most part for the Wildcats last season and 3 years ago. Played right guard in 2023. I do think he is going to be a guard. A lot of people projected him to move from outside to inside, not only because of the need for Dolphins at guard, but just overall in his skill set at the next level due to his foot speed, his good core strength and inside power, and it just seemed like most people believed he would be better fit at guard. And with the Dolphins needing a starting guard, I think he slides into that right guard role. You pair a rookie in between Aaron Brewer and Austin Jackson, 2 solid veterans. That makes a lot of sense. And you put a veteran in James Daniels, who you signed to a 3-year deal in the offseason, next to a first-year full-time starter in Patrick Paul. That's likely your starting 5 combination up front if you do not have any injuries in the offseason. And it's clear that Miami valued him a lot. And how could you not be excited about Savaiinaea based off what we've seen in terms of the character, the versatility, the athleticism? And if anything I say should stick out to you on today's show, it's just that whenever you see a player get traded up for in the draft, it's clear that that team really wanted him. And with Miami sitting at pick 48, they were certain that there was no way that their guy, Jonah Savaiinaea, was going to make it to that 48th overall pick. So they traded their 3rd round pick and they swapped 4th and 5th round picks with Las Vegas to move up 11 spots and to get their guy. And in the moment, I was a little bit shocked. I was surprised because the Dolphins just had such a desperate need at cornerback. And you had players like Will Johnson, Trey Amos, Benjamin Morrison, Savone Revel on the board. So I was like, all right, they're trading up to grab a corner. But they took Jonah. And I was a little bit taken aback from that. Because, yes, offensive guard was in need. But I was just like, well, could you have sat there at 48 and taken Jonah? Or could you have just sat there and taken one of your corners that was going to be there? And Amos, Morrison, and Revel were all there at 48. Will Johnson went 47. But that is part of the process that I went into in terms of grading and talking about the pick. But it has grown on me more and more because as stories have come out and you've seen him start to participate in rookie minicamp and get in the locker room, the organization, headquarters, and see the coaching staff talk about him, it's clear that this is a player Miami valued. I think this is an interesting hypothetical to talk about. Now that we have had a almost full month pass, almost, not quite there yet, since the NFL draft, would you still have traded up to take Jonah Savaiinaea, knowing what you know now? Type Y for yes or type N for no. I think I would. I think I would be typing my Ys. It wasn't the most easiest decision to make for me to double down and say I would have traded up for him like Miami ultimately did. But I do think what I've seen, what I've read, and what people have talked about post-draft, Savaiinaea would not have been there at number 48. We actually did a video about it just days after the draft that it sounded like the New England Patriots were contemplating taking him with their pick at number 38, 39. No, 38 for sure. I always get those numbers confused. And if we're really going to be honest and play hindsight's 2020, you look back to the third round in Miami's 98th overall pick, there wasn't that many good options on the board in terms of offensive linemen or cornerback. So I'm fine moving up to get a guy that you valued a lot. And something we talk about at the channel a lot. It's versatility. Not for offensive linemen, not only for secondary, but I always say it when we talk about versatility on the channel. I preach it in life. And he has been able to showcase the ability to play multiple different spots on the offensive line. Played right tackle the most, specifically last season. He split time between left tackle, where he played 345 snaps, and right tackle, around 400 snaps there. Played right tackle his first year as a starter in 2022, and then 2023 is when he played right guard full time as a starter. So he can play tackle, he can play guard. Probably not center, but 4 out of the 5 spots. Chris Grier loves versatility on the offensive line. For better or for worse, Liam Eichenberg, versatile. Austin Jackson, Aaron Brewer, like these guys can move around. Isaiah Wynn, who he signed, like he likes the versatility. And Savaiinaea had such a good collegiate career that it's hard not to get giddy when you pair his athleticism, his versatility, and his production to add him to the Dolphins depth chart, add him to the roster. It's like, all right, we got a guy here. Let's do it. Let's solidify this offensive line, protect Tua, and also be a better running team like we were in 2023 when the Dolphins had the number 1 rushing attack in all of football and a top 5 offense in the NFL. I think the decline in offensive production last season could be heavily attributed to, obviously, injuries to Tua Tagovailoa because he played 11 games rather than 17 in 2023, but the inability to run the ball when you needed to up the middle in between the tackles. That was missing last season. Hopefully, with James Daniels and Savaiinaea joining this offensive line, you will no longer have those issues. And we saw, based off his production, his tape, his PFF grades, that he is a good fit for this Dolphins group. You see his run blocking grades in zone schemes. They're significantly better than in gap schemes. Well, no one implores more of a run blocking zone scheme than Mike McDaniel. So many wide zone concepts, so many end arounds. It's getting to the perimeter, it's speed. But Savaiinaea also has the possibility and potential to be someone that bullies you up the middle with his solid base and solid strength. Like, I am just so excited to watch this offensive line work. It could end up being bad. It could. But on paper, I think it's better than last year's because you don't have Robert Jones. You don't have Liam Eichenberg. And yeah, you're losing Teron Armstead, but you have an upgraded spot at left guard, an upgraded spot at right guard, a second-year Aaron Brewer at center, Austin Jackson back from injury because he only played half the year last season, and a second-round pick from 2024, Patrick Paul, getting his first chance. Savaiinaea, he's going to be a week 1 starter, unless an injury occurs. Like, I think he would have to be the worst offensive lineman to ever grace the planet to not be able to beat out Liam Eichenberg for that right guard spot. Larry Borum's going to be your swing tackle. I think Liam Eichenberg is going to be your interior lineman, depth piece behind Daniels, behind Savaiinaea. Maybe the Dolphins sign another offensive lineman for depth as well. But I think Jonah is going to be your starting right guard or starting left guard. But my preference is right guard because you have him in between 2 veterans that know what they're doing. And hopefully that right side of the offensive line, which is Tua's blind side, added incentive to have a good right side of the line more than the left side, could be huge for the Fins this year. And this is why you subscribe to the channel, by the way, because we put out content every single day that is 100% free. Join the channel. Videos are going out twice a day at times as well. So join us here at Dolphins Today. All right, let's move over to Jordan Phillips now, the defensive lineman from Maryland that was taken in the 5th round. He was not in the top 10. I mentioned it. Field Yates had 10 players not in the first round offensively and defensively that can make an impact on their teams. But he also had about 3 or 4 honorable mentions. Well, Field Yates labeled Jordan Phillips as an honorable mention. The defensive lineman from Maryland has a lot of strength. He's one of the youngest players in the draft class at 20 years of age right now, and it's going to be exciting to see him added to this group. Well, Field Yates, talking about Phillips, said that he was a wrestler and weightlifter in high school, and that shows up on his tape. He is one of the most physical run defenders in the rookie class and plays with excellent leverage. Miami landed Kenneth Grant with its first-round pick, but Phillips will also help the Dolphins become much more physical and tougher on the defensive front. And I know a lot of people are critical of Chris Grier. Me too. I want him fired. I wanted him fired before the offseason, and I wanted, to be honest, him and McDaniel both gone. Maybe that was overreactionary, different conversation for a different day. But we as fans and content creators, analysts of this team, have consistently said before the draft, before free agency, that the trenches needed to be the biggest improvement. And I know a lot of concerns about the secondary. They are warranted. But Chris Grier's commitment to build the trenches this offseason was smart, and it will help a lot. You see James Daniels' side in free agency. Yeah, they didn't do anything on the defensive line, but then they go to the draft and draft Kenneth Grant in round 1, Jonah Savaiinaea round 2. And then you go Jordan Phillips in round 5, Zeke Biggers in round 7. Like, you added 3 physical defensive linemen. You added your final offensive lineman that should be starting. Like, you have to give Grier credit for finally addressing the trenches. And Phillips might have been a steal of the draft, by the way, because when you look at his advanced metrics, not production in terms of sacks, TFLs, and those kind of stats, but when you look at his pass rush win rate and his run stop rate, how effective is he stopping the run when it's run at him, and how effective is he getting after the quarterback and winning against the offensive lineman he's lined up against in rushing the quarterback situations? Well, in 2024, he was the 18th best interior defensive lineman in terms of beating his offensive lineman with a pass rush move. 18th out of 175 qualified D linemen. And then in the run stop game, he had a 7.6% run stop rate, which tells you how often he was able to stop a run play and make it a negative play for the opposing offense. That ranked 34th out of 194 interior defensive linemen. So you're getting a player that in the advanced metrics was terrific in terms of getting after the quarterback and stopping the run. You're also getting a defensive lineman that was one of the most young players in this draft class at age 20 years old. He can't have a freaking beer right now, folks. He's turning 21 in a couple months. But the youthfulness of Phillips is so fascinating to me. And you look at the entire draft class Miami had. Kenneth Grant's only 21. Savaiinaea is only 21. Like, you have a lot of young players that you drafted. It was the youngest draft class in the entire NFL by a wide margin, and it was the youngest draft class as an organization in the last 5 years by 8 months on average. They went young, they went trenches, and it will be very helpful to the Fins. And Jordan Phillips has a role on this team, by the way. We'll talk about that role. But before we do, let me know your thoughts. Will Jordan Phillips be a starter for the Fins? Type S for starter, type R for reserve. I might type my R's for reserve right now. I'll tell you why here in a second. But if he was the starter by the end of the year, would not shock me one bit. All right, so let's look at the defensive line depth chart, because you have Zach Sieler as your lead D lineman, a hybrid run stopper, get after the quarterback, just one of the simply most underrated players in the entire NFL, and I would argue he's the best player on the Dolphins roster, not just defense, last season. You drafted Kenneth Grant to be that change of pace guy. He can play alongside Sieler, he can play one tech, he can play three tech, just eats up space, can get after the quarterback, can stop the run, high motor, high culture guy. But we're focusing on Jordan Phillips right now. Benito Jones was kind of your rotational one tech last year with Deshaun Hand, Calais Campbell, Zach Sieler. I think Jordan Phillips' role year one will be a mix-in guy with Benito Jones. I think Jones will get first crack, but Phillips will work in with him. And you just have a rotation here at defensive line for Sieler, Grant, Benito, Phillips. I think Zeke Biggers, as a big defensive lineman from Georgia Tech, has an option and a potential possibility to be a player right away for Miami. Like, going into the draft, the defensive line was the biggest question, even more than secondary. Coming out of the draft, I'm very bullish, very optimistic about this young defensive line room. All right, final word on today's show. Not often do you see the Dolphins get praise from the national media, but for the most part, people have been very complimentary of the picks for Miami. Some have been negative. Mel Kiper didn't like the Dolphins' pick of Kenneth Grant in the first round, but F. Mel Kiper. Couldn't give two shits what he says, if I'm going to be honest. But you've seen people talk about Quinn Ewers being an excellent pick for Miami in the 7th round. People have talked and raved about Jordan Phillips. There's even been some positive buzz about Dante Trader Jr., the 5th-round safety from Maryland. And I actually don't know one person who has spoken negatively about the Jonah Savaiinaea pick in the 2nd round. Like, every draft analyst has praised Miami for making that selection, getting their guy to finally address the trenches and solidifying that starting group. So the Dolphins have gotten praise from media and analysts for their draft class. It's kind of refreshing to see, and hopefully it's not phony and the Dolphins draft class ultimately ends up being good. That'll do it for today's show. Appreciate everybody for joining us here. Make sure you are subscribed for more Dolphins daily coverage, and we will have a video out later today breaking down the full Miami Dolphins schedule as well. So hit that sub button and stay on the lookout for that.